Hi, Real Growth listeners. Today we have Steven. He is the founder and managing partner of EmergeCounsel. Thank you, Steven, for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Vinny. It's good to see you.
Yeah, so most of the time we're dealing with the entrepreneur, business owners, kind of working through a struggle. But you know what? Sometimes people forget that the attorney has some stuff that they're dealing with too. So
Yeah, my journey's a little different though. I mean, I started out. I'll go through that a little later, but I was an entrepreneur and kind of still am. I started a predictive analytics business back in 2006 after a career in corporate, and so there's the good, the bad, the ugly, and really it was a successful business. It was a predictive analytics business. It was a business. The problem with the business is it was business to government, and so we needed to raise a substantial amount of money to handle the cash flow issues that we have. So it would be, our nut that we'd have to hit would be a nut that we'd have to hit every month, regardless. You have salaries, you have things that you have to do to make that business just run. And then our sales were like sometimes we'd have a $500,000 sale, $1 million sale, but we'd have to carry the business between those periods of time. And that in and of itself kind of killed the business, and the need to raise a lot of money diluted my equity, and I ultimately exited earlier than I would have liked to.
well, I mean, let's before we get, I guess, into your corporate world. I mean, young Steven growing up, was that his intentions to be in the corporate world and kind of move the ranks and kind of do that whole?
That's a really interesting question. When actually, I always, I was always interested in. This is a long time ago. I'm getting older. You can see here, but I was always interested in government. And so I thought I wanted to be even like a politician. I was a poli sci major. And I always thought that you could make the most amount of change or do what you wanted to do more effectively inside the system. And so I started, again, I went to the University of Colorado Boulder and I was a poli sci major, and then was fortunate enough to get a job working for Congress in Washington, D.C. And so I started, and then I became a prosecutor through that. I became a prosecutor in Miami, Florida, and I worked for Janet Reno. So I was like really politically, who was a attorney general for the United States. Anyway, I always thought that working inside a system was kind of my cup of tea. And then I went to become corporate counsel at AT&T Corporation back in the early 2000s. And I think a combination of all those experiences working inside a very large system made me realize that I'm really, I just want to kind of have a vision, get the job done, do it as efficiently as possible. And large organizations don't really provide that opportunity, um, at least for me. I was especially at a large organization when I was working inside it. You'd always get in trouble, not like no one was like, Steve, you suck. It was more like, Steve, you're getting outside the team. Steve, like somebody else, we hired someone else to do that. Just do the job description. And I don't find like that's really my personality or a way that I wanted to operate. So in like 2000, what was it, 2006, I went entrepreneurial and I never went back. Um, Although, sometimes it's inviting to have like, wow, you get 3 weeks vacation and you get a set salary and all that stuff. But other than that, I'm an entrepreneurial guy, and it took me a while to realize that. And again, I would never look back. I think sometimes it's a lonely journey, but that's another discussion.
Well, okay, so you're talking about it's you have to um, build it inside, I guess, whatever industry you're looking in, like building. So, I mean, what were your goals? I mean, what was the plan? Was it to be a politician one day? Was it just to be that person making a change in the world and the environment? I mean, what was like the end goal? Did you have something there, or was it just like one foot in front of the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning of I mean, when I was young and idealistic, I think it was to change the world. And then you realize through large systems that, and not, I mean, I wasn't unrealistic on my ability to do that. It just was like, be part of it. And again, when I've worked for really large organizations, um, it's difficult to have it, unless your career goal, like my career at AT&T was really focused on a little bit on protecting brand, on protecting their assets, which were telephone lines and cables and fiber, and some wireless. That unless I visioned that was what I wanted to do the rest of my life, it's hard to get super passionate about that. You just become really compartmentalized. So then when you become, I think, when I, at least in my life journey, when I became an entrepreneur again, and really in my law practice focus on entrepreneurial organizations, it's really like that's when you have to really make those decisions on, all right, you have a wide open, sea out there. Where are you going to plot your line in the sand? What do you want to do? So in my business, when I had it, it was the predictive analytics business was really we spidered into webs databases for school districts, and we were able to predict which kids would have the probability of dropping out before they dropped out, so we could work with the school districts on providing additional resources to the kids in need. So it was like, they have a ton of data. They didn't know what to do with it. We could spider in through a bunch of means and get them reports. And that was, super rewarding to me. It's like, talk about a big vision. It wasn't like I, decided to open the 7-Eleven on the corner after my career at AT&T. It was really, I went big, and I was really happy with my decision to go big, but I went really, big vision, really, what is my mission in life? And being a prosecutor, I saw tons of kids that you might as the system is not very good at rehabilitating. So, those were like kind of lost lives. And so I really had, when I went for it, and it was really a deep vision and a deep mission that I had. And I feel, it's interesting because now that was not a long time ago, but 2006 wasn't yesterday. And now that I have this practice, I feel equally as passionate about helping entrepreneurs um, figure out what their life journey is, and um, growing the company to create value and getting from point A to point B, at least through the legal barriers that they're going to face. So, it's funny. Over the years, I feel equally as passionate about something that, usually they're like, "Oh, I got to talk to the attorney." That's not something that someone looks forward to in the day. But it's interesting now. It's like I feel equally as passionate about what I'm doing, even though I had this huge mission based company that I shot for the stars for.
Do you think there's anything that AT&T could have done to buy out your passion?
It wasn't in the position. I was the old AT&T, so it was actually acquired, and the
Oh, okay.
money. Yeah, so it wasn't. I would have never. I would advise every entrepreneur or anyone that is kind of going through the journey of career. Um, I would have never gone into that thinking that it was going to get sold and it was gonna, you know, they couldn't wait to show you the door with a good exit package. But the I would have never done that. That would have been a bad career move. But that's what ultimately happened. The company was getting groomed. It got sold, and we all exit. So they weren't exactly, and the line of telecommunications went under. So it was really like my skills weren't all that marketable at the time, and so it wasn't like they were looking like to put me with the opportunity for growth. It was more like I fought 2 layoffs, which I'm still amazed about, because when I went into that, I didn't know anything about telecommunication. I didn't know how a telephone worked, and yet I was able to hang in there, so I didn't get laid off like right when I started, but somebody else did. So it was tough just hanging in there. It was a real corporate lesson. Like again, nothing against the old AT&T, but it was I learned a lot. It's like you're very replaceable, and what you did for an organization yesterday isn't necessarily what they're thinking about tomorrow. So it's I think there are organizations, many in the corporate, that give you the opportunity to grow, and I would encourage anyone to explore that. And I certainly I couldn't have done what I did in business or in law without that AT&T experience. So I don't look at it as a negative thing, but I think data shows that most people switch careers once every, I don't want to quote it, but 4 or 5 years. And so I think the lesson of the 21st century is that somebody has to really think out their own career and their own goals and their own, more importantly, mission, because we only live once, right? And so if you really want to have passion for what you do, at least hypothetically 40 hours a week, I love working with people that have passion about it, and that's how I've always felt. No passion, it's kind of tough to go to work.
Now, how often do you look back and go, if AT&T was never bought and transitioned to the new AT&T, that you'd still be in that,
Interesting.
yes, yeah, the industry, and maybe not as happy as you are now?
Yeah, it's a dual-edged question sword, in the fact that, listen, sometimes I would get in trouble for, again, it wasn't like I was a trouble. Everyone, I got along with everyone, and I still have friends from that experience. But I get in trouble sometimes because I would stay I remember in Seattle at the Hilton, and everyone else was staying at the Four Seasons. And it made the books kind of look bad when someone's staying at the Hilton, because it's cheaper. And, the Four Seasons, why couldn't they have, so it was bad for the auditor. So they're like, well, Steve, you have to stay at the Four Seasons. So that part of it was really, I ate really well. A corporate lifestyle, flew business class. Everything was really, the pay was good. The people were really smart. All that was really positive. Looking back at the experience, though, I was always wondering to myself, like, why can't we do things a little more efficiently, or a little, more entrepreneurially? There's so many opportunities, but that's a reality. It's nothing against the old AT&T. It's like, that's what provides opportunities for entrepreneurs. That legacy companies are slow, they're bureaucratic, and that takes a lot of people to make a decision. Now, when they would make a decision, they might disrupt a marketplace, whereas you can't do that individually, necessarily. But was that a great experience? Well, if you're just part of you're not even part of the decision making, you just do what they tell you to do. It wasn't all that part of it was not all that rewarding. And ultimately, I remember I probably was looking at job ads and trying to figure out more entrepreneurial organizations. I remember looking at one, which was Enron. Thank God I didn't go over that, but they were, offering huge money. But I never understood you want to understand a little bit about the play, and I never understood Enron's play. Obviously, they didn't have one. So, but the pay would have been amazing for, as long as I avoided indictment. So anyway.
So what happened with your company? So you're building your company. It sounds like it's making good progress. It's helping. Schools know which students might not make it. So what happened with that company?
It's kind of a bitter lesson for me, as far as life and how the stars line up in general. The company was, I don't think when I started that anyone even understood it or thought I had a chance. We were really creating a market. School districts weren't like, oh, I need to find out what data my at-risk students have, so I can keep headcount. We had to explain that they needed this, and so it took a while to get started. And I was always just a very prudent manager, meaning I didn't spend a ton of money. But ultimately, again, as you grow, you have cash flow issues. So if we had a headcount, we had at its biggest, I think we had a headcount of 30, and we had to pay those people. So I had, even though the contracts wouldn't be coming in for a while, so I had cash flow issues. I also had no experience in running a business, and I didn't really have organizations like EO or anyone to, like, even WeWork. Like, there was nothing there to, like, even talk to other entrepreneurs. And my only feedback was the market, um, and investors. And it was really, I had no experience in investor management. So I hired a COO. Um, we started, I never had a COO before. I didn't even know what to do with a COO because I was used to doing all that stuff. And so then it was like, well, Steve, carry the mission to grow the company, but don't do sales because we have a sales manager. And so it just was really never had any experiences like it was kind of, again, I went from being everything to compartmentalized, and I didn't really know how to handle that. So that was issue number two. And the COO was probably used to being managed, or told, here's a company plan, and anyway, it wasn't the right fit. So that was all going on, and then I had an experience where we were about to sell the company, and I would have been had some meat in the locker for sure, and been able to really map out my next great opportunity over years because I would have been a sizable meat in the locker. And then I was going to work with a large company. I can't really say who, very large, AT&T size. And the person that was in charge of business development for the company got in a cab that day, and the cab driver decided to commit suicide. And so he drove, this is in Boston, drove into a traffic circle, flipped a cab, and broke the guy's back, and he never went back to the large company. So we had a deal like on the table, like even a term sheet, and it eviscerated.
Wow.
So at the same time, I have the COO problem, I have a cash flow problem, I was about to sell the company problem. My next step was, and then my father, I wasn't in the best mental state because my father was in hospice dying of cancer. So you have to, the lesson of that is like, don't take out the violence from me. It's more that you have to take your emotional issues into check, or at least realize you have them when you're going through something like this. Because I was like, well, I'll deal with this separately. I'll go and sit in hospital, but it's like, no, that's all like really interrelated to everything else going on in your life. And so the fourth thing is, so with all that going on, I'm like, I just got to throw my sails to the wind, and I raised a bunch of what I would call dumb money, meaning they didn't know anything about the industry, and they were just venture capitalists, general venture capitalists. And then, so all this kind of happened all at the same time, and then I knew when I took on that money that I was just going to throw my sails to the wind. That I didn't really have a really good plan for the next stage of growth, and that I was butting heads with almost everyone, the investors, because they were, we all thought we would cash out. And so then what happened is when I raised this whole bunch of money, I diluted. So you do the math, I had 75% of the company. All of a sudden I have 42%. These are hypotheticals, but you have 42%, you lose control of the company. I lost control of the company. I lost control of the management. And then I negotiated an exit package and kept some equity and got out.
So you lost the company that you built.
Basically, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's a rough road.
So I mean, all that stuff, I mean, it has to be hitting like a ton of bricks.
It was a long time, but yeah.
Well, how do you like keep going? I mean, what's the mindset? Like, what do you do to get back on your feet to like start your next company? I mean, what happened next?
Well, I realized I needed to heal, and it was more about my father, I think, than it was about and how and learning from my experience. Like, you can't take it back. It was a really, to be honest, it was a really tough business. Like if anyone wants to do business to government, call me first and I'll explain why that's a really tough road. Even we go to conferences and all the vendors would be like, if I could get out of this business. So it wasn't that bad, it's like whatever. And I did monetize my experience. So it wasn't like so bad, but I had to heal. And then I had to, I immediately had an entrepreneurial mindset. It's like, and most of my clients are entrepreneurs, and I get them. But it's like, oh my god, next opportunity. So I'm like, how about the wine business? How about the cocktail business? So I started going to wine school. I was like, all hot to try. Well, that's a worse business than the than education. So, long story short, my wife one day said, Steve, you got to take out, you are always a really good attorney, but take out a piece of paper, and you can't sit in the basement and do all this stuff. Like, it's not productive for you or the family. So take out a piece of paper, and this was in 2014, and write down what you're good at. And everything I'm good at related to the practice that I built. And so in 2014, I always had a law license, and I mean, I'm a really good lawyer. And so I sat down, and that was never a problem for me. It's like, this is my skill set. And really started building the brand, because I'm very brand focused through my experiences, and built a practice where I help entrepreneurs who have created their vision to get from point A to point B, which usually is maturing the company, creating value in a very cost effective and empathetic manner. Meaning, I get my clients, I get what they don't like paying for, I get what they don't like talking to me about, I get how to build trust in a real, tangible, meaningful way, and how to be the lawyer that they never thought they could get. Like, meaning, most of the time, and I don't mean that like in an egotistical way. I mean, like, most lawyers, you start practicing, and you're on the side, and no one likes to, it's never a cherished moment to talk to the attorney. And they know what they know, and they really, know how to do what they know. And so mine is much more holistic. My view is like, I got to get to know the client, I got to get to know what their vision is, and I do that all for free, because it's important to me to understand what they're doing. And then, just really kind of the side confidant, because you're always going to have a C-suite, right? Like, even it doesn't, in your real estate endeavors, you have partners, or you have agents, you always have a team. Well, the attorney, you're never like, oh, let's get the attorney in on the team. Like, that's not the role of counsel. We're kind of, unless you're big enough to have general counsel or whatever. But even they don't have like a ton to say about your business planning. So, but this is like kind of a separate channel where you build a relationship where the attorney understands your vision. They understand your desires, your goals, what your issues are, sometimes even your personal issues, and really helps you figure out, almost like a coach. But it's much more, we do, we don't just say, well, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? It's like, all right, well, let's create this separate LLC. Let's it's always a big important thing to protect the brand. Like, that's every entrepreneur needs to protect the essence, the intangible assets of the company. And so, some clients I have really tight relationships with, and I'm listed on some of my clients like estate plans, which I'm really honored. That if the business goes, if they die, I run the business. I find that like incredibly an honor. But some, it's much more. I hear from them once a year or something. It just depends on the need of the entrepreneur. But it's the important thing is building that type of relationship to be able to make sure that as they grow, that there's going to be no barriers in the way, that they're not going to get to due diligence or something and they screwed it all up because their governance is all screwed up, or that they get sued and they never just did the basics to avoid personal liability. I'm just making up some examples.
Why is that perception, do you think, that people don't get the feedback of the attorneys usually?
Well, the number one thing is every time you call an attorney, they the clock starts running. And so it's true. And so what we do is I vowed, and so my clients are all over the country and all over the world actually. But I vowed to this if you call me for like, it's not going to take up my day. I usually don't bill for that, because some attorneys are like, well, let's go out to lunch. Let's go to the Rotary Club or something. That's a lot of time, and my focus is like, no, I want to not charge and get to know my clients and understand the basics of what we're trying to get to, and not charge for that. And so I do um, that persona of running up the clock um, isn't, you got to take away that perception, and that's the number one. It's like, who, every budget only has so much for legal, right? If any. And so you want to, and then we try and do project based too. Like so our trademark package is it's one price. It's not the cheapest, but it's really top quality at a very value driven price. And so, we just make it package. It doesn't matter if it's going to take me 5 hours or 20 hours. It's, one set price. And so that takes away that perception. So that's number one. Number two is, again, a lot of attorneys have never been in the business world. Their business might, except the legal business world. And so they tend to, you know, hang out with the same people and really not get the, not not build a really good holistic understanding of their clients. And so, why I went into this is because, again, when I really had to write down all that stuff on a piece of paper, I wish I had a better relationship with my attorney. Like back in the day, I didn't really have an attorney. I'm like, oh, I could do this all, but you don't. No, we're trained to be like, look at all the angles, neutral, explain risks, and when you're in the entrepreneur, you're not in the. You can't do both. You just can't. You're either going to be too cautious or too aggressive, and so you need this person to vet with. And so, um, finding the right person to build that relationship with can be very tough because a lot of attorneys have never been on the other side. So I think that's number two. And number three, it's like, again, it's just like, there's jokes about stockbrokers and attorneys. It's just like there just are, and so there's a perception to get over. Um, so and number four, it's a subject matter. It can be quite dry, and so honestly, sometimes it's a world of boring. So you gotta get to the, why does it matter to the person? What exactly are we doing? A, B, C, D, and why? And then it matters. And sometimes it matters more than anything else matters. And so that's the marketing plan has to be to overcome those issues. And that's how I've chosen to do it. Um, and it's amazing. I built the best relationships in it. They're all over the place. So it's so cool. I'm so happy about it.
In your past, I guess, businesses or positions, I think you talked about like briefly how you almost got pushed out of the stuff that you thrived at. And when building this company, has there been things where you're like, these are things that I'm never going to go away from? Even if our company gets bigger and bigger, I'm always going to be the person they talk to, or whatever it might be. Are there things that are like not going to change even in the next 5-10 years that you foresee?
Yeah, that's been that is a tough issue. I love knowing about my clients and understanding their basic framework and needs. And I built the practice. So between the technology we have and just building the relationship first, even though I have staff, we're a team of 4 and sometimes 5. Um, I'm being able to fulfill the mission and goal. Sometimes we've grown, and as sometimes we get really busy or get really focused on a certain case or cases, and I kind of lose the perspective of what's going on with some of my clients. Meaning the work's getting done, they're happy, it's with someone else in our firm, but it's I'm not, I lose perspective on how our mission's affecting that particular person. And so I think it's really important to come back, and comes from just business management, and something I wish I would have done in my last company, is have more discussions about the mission and obligations to our clients on the mission, and that's how we're going to move. I am thrilled right now. We have team meetings once a week. It's just like it's almost like talking to the attorney. It's not something we do it on Tuesdays, and we don't. None of us really cherishes it. Like it's like we keep on. And I used to blow it off, but now it's religious. Like every Tuesday we have this meeting. But lately, people have been in my organization have been telling me the mission and how they're working towards mission. And it's not like they're trying to say, "Oh, Steve, I'm trying to prove something to you." It's just become ingrained in our fabric in our law firm. And I'm just like, whoa, this is like a turning point for me. And so it provides an opportunity to grow, because then, it's almost like, if it's grained into their fabric, then they'll ingrain it into someone else's fabric as we potentially add people. The thing, I I've I don't know if this is every attorney's mission, and so that it's tough to figure out what we're gonna do here. Like, it's is it, are there partners out there? I had that bad at COO experience. I would rather not relive that. And I deal with partnership divorces sometimes, and God, it sounds like the worst. So that's something always going on in my head. Like, well, what am I going to do tomorrow? But I've learned to focus towards today. And again, if it's lucrative enough, if I'm making a good enough living, then I really am enjoying just being empathetic and working with my clients on their partners, on their journeys, and avoiding disaster. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Steven, for being on the Road Growth podcast. If someone's listening and they're starting a business, or they have a business and they're looking for, I guess, an attorney that's maybe not so much on the financial aspect of it, charging for every aspect, but more of kind of a partner like yourself that you kind of talked about, what's the best way of them getting more information about you and your company?
Yeah, thank you. It's www.emerge, EMERGE, counsel, COUNSEL.com. And my name again is Steve Weigler, and I'm glad to have a discussion with anyone if they're looking for a lawyer, not looking for a lawyer. I just like learning about people. And you can schedule with me at SWEIGLER at EmergeCounsel.com, and then I'll send you a link to my scheduler. And we offer, again, we don't charge for talking on the phone usually, unless we're in the middle of a deal, sure. But that's, and you'll see on our website how we operate. So again, I'd love to meet everyone. Our clients are all over the place.
It's so funny. It's just a little small thing, not your aspect. I had an attorney once that I called them up just to ask them if they received the check I sent, and I got a bill for them checking that they got the check, and I was like, okay, you know what, this is getting out of control. But I always thought it was funny. But no, that's definitely.
No, I mean, and I think, it happens. I don't know. It's one thing I don't love about being an attorney is, like, productivity is time. And so, there's certain businesses probably like yours where, it's a lot of other intangibles that create revenue. And so sometimes it happens. I encourage the audience to, if you have a problem, like if there's an unnecessary bill like that, you gotta advocate for yourself. That's ridiculous. Like, but I'm telling you,
well,
they have quotas, and we don't have any of that.
It's funny. I've had a lot of different attorneys on the podcast, and I had one attorney. The reason why he became an attorney was that he was in this negotiation, and he got a phone call from the attorney on the other side, and he said his heart dropped. It's a longer story. He talked about on the podcast. His heart dropped, but he goes, that feeling that I felt when that attorney called me, I wanted people to have that same feeling when I called them. And I was like, wow, okay. Everyone has the reason.
As a litigator, I do some of that. I get all charged up, but that's, you do what you need to do. Yeah. So anyway, but I don't cherish, the idea that my client's in a dispute and we have to go to litigation.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I mean, I think for everyone listening, hopefully they got some great nuggets. I mean, I still look back at the idea that he talked about, what Stephen talked about, if you're listening, right, that he was in the corporate world. He didn't really have the passion in that profession, but it was so good. Sometimes when things are so good, it might be hurting you on the inside, but you don't realize it. I mean, I've had that effect. People probably listening have had that effect before. Sometimes you just need that little push. And so sometimes when that saying, when a window closes, a door opens, right? Whatever that saying is, that happened. It seems like it happened to Steven. And now he's changing the way that maybe people look at attorneys. So thank you so much, Steven, for being here. Hopefully everyone got some great nuggets. Please go in the show notes and go find Steven. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.